Well, I'm seeing that Dr. Cooper is having a very good day today. And Sasha's dancing. And, for people that don't know, we are going to sing Golden, K-pop Demon Hunter, starring Sasha Strauss. And
Maybe
my
we should
voice,
just go ahead and get started instead.
yes.
Hello and welcome to IP Talk, Brand Insights, a quarterly discussion on the intersection of brand strategy and intellectual property. This series is presented by Virtual Patent Gateway. Our facilitators today are Sasha Strauss, a brand strategist with more than 25 years of experience, McNeal Maddox, an independent brand strategist and brand strength coach, and Brenna Holland, social media specialist at VPG. They are joined by Dr. Rory A. Cooper, National Medal Laureate and Assistant Vice Chancellor for Research at the University of Pittsburgh. And with that, I'll pass things over to VPG founder Ashley Cheung to get started.
Thank you, Kaylin. I've been waiting for this show for a long time. And guess what? My voice is not great. So instead of torturing everyone, I am empowering today's show and give it to Brenna Holland. And a little bit of background that I literally just asked her yesterday, and she made arrangement. I was like, "What are you doing on Thursday at 1 to 1:45 p.m.?" And we do have to end at 1:45. And she said, "I don't know. What do you have in mind?" It's like, "I would like you to take over my role because I think that you would do a better job than I can this particular time, especially." And she said she made her arrangement, and here she is. So thank you, Brenna. And I am going to go off. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Cooper. Thank you, Sasha and McNeal. And have a great time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ashley.
Hey, thank you, Ashley. I am excited for this opportunity. A little nervous, so bear with me, but I'm really excited. We'll just go ahead and jump into it really quick. I'm going to introduce Dr. Cooper. Dr. Cooper is the founding director of HURL, Human Engineering Research Laboratories at the University of Pittsburgh. And in October of 2023, he was awarded the National Medal of Technology and Innovation by President Biden and was inducted into the 50th class of the National Inventors Hall of Fame. Now, his resume might as well be a novel, so I'll just stop there. Dr. Cooper, can you please share a quick fun fact about yourself?
Oh, a quick fun fact about myself. That's good. Well, I guess one is I'm also a Paralympic medalist. So I competed in the Seoul, Korea Paralympics in 1988. I am not a K-pop singer, but so I guess that's a fun fact. Another fun fact that people might not know, I was also the inspiration for a character in a romance novel called The Book Lover by Marianne McFadden, if anybody is so inclined to read romance novels. And by the way, my wife didn't know the story until she met Marianne McFadden and actually read the proofs, and then she met Marianne McFadden.
That is a pretty fun fact. That is really interesting. Thank you. We'll go ahead and pass it to Sasha if you want to introduce yourself and share a fun fact as well.
I mean, nobody's writing romance novels about me, so there's nothing I can say that's going to go well here. My goodness. All right. So hi, everyone. I'm a professor of branding, and I teach it at a few different business schools. And I work on interesting nonprofit and for-profit branding programs. And my fun fact is that the three schools that I primarily teach at, UC Irvine, UCLA, and USC business schools, I was rejected from in all my applications for over a decade. So kind of fun to come full circle and get to teach at all of them.
Okay, that is awesome. Thank you for sharing. McNeal, same to you. Can you introduce yourself and a fun fact?
Of course. Thanks, Brenna. I'm McNeal Maddox. I'm an independent brand consultant. I've been working in-house in different companies, but also with agencies for companies for several years. My fun fact is I actually started my career as a graphic designer, and I actually started my college in 1994, the same year that Dr. Cooper started his professorship at Pitt. So I was actually right up the street from you at CMU. So we have that Carnegie Mellon connection, and probably might have bumped into you at the Dirty O with the French fries. And Sasha, it's this famous hot dogs and French fries. It's this famous like hot dog stand French fry place down in Oakland where University of Pittsburgh is located. But that's my fun fact.
I could have named
No
that.
romance novels, but
Yeah, fun fact that I'm also a professor of the Robotic Institute at Carnegie Mellon, so
yes,
I'll be leaving here to join them.
wonderful.
That is awesome. Small world, really small
Yes,
world. That's
very.
awesome. Okay. Before we get started, I just want to quickly say that we have to end promptly at 1:45 because Dr. Cooper has places to be and important people to see. Okay, so for the first section, we're going to talk about innovation and what does innovation mean to each of you as an inventor and a brand strategist. First, we'll ask Dr. Cooper, was there a moment in your life or career that fundamentally reshaped how you define innovation?
Oh, wow. A few of them. Obviously, when I was a soldier and got injured and had to rethink my whole life and my career, that made me think about innovation. And then I think probably another one was because especially when I learned that wheelchairs were not very good and I was going to spend the rest of my life probably using one. And so I had to think about that. And then I was lucky I got involved in wheelchair sports pretty early and with some of the very innovative companies that were developing ultralight wheelchairs and more modern wheelchairs. And that was pretty exciting. And then probably another big moment was when I was a PhD student, and my advisor pulled me aside and asked me what I was going to do in my career, and let me and made me really think about creating technology for people with disabilities as a career choice, rather than going into a more mainstream industry.
Okay, thank you. That's really unique story. Thank you. Sasha, the next question's for you. What does innovation mean to you, and why did you name your company Innovation Protocol?
Thanks for asking. What innovation means to me is a little bit better everywhere. Just a little bit better, whether it's how we make our food or how we administer healthcare. That's how I couch innovation. And the reason why I named our company Innovation Protocol is because innovative organizations sort of behave haphazardly. They're sort of in the midst of innovating and creating, and they lose sense of who they are, why they're doing it, and how to consistently communicate that. So we created a protocol for brands that innovate.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for explaining that. McNeal, what about you? Can you share the name of Genevelin, and what does it have to do with your view about innovation?
Thank you. Genevelin, it's the company that I started. It really is an homage. It's the name is actually a portmanteau of my grandmother's names. But at least my focus on innovation comes from the design background that I mentioned earlier, right? And we were always, or I was trained to understand that design is about solutions. It's not about making things pretty. It's about actually coming up with better solutions. And that's where I think innovation lives, right? When you think about these challenges and how everything is changing, there might be things that you can bring, peripheral insights that you can bring into other places that become innovations, right? So something that might be just commonplace in one field applied to another becomes an innovation in that field, or just something that you might not have seen before in a place that you don't expect that's actually solving a problem becomes an innovation for others. So that's the way I like to think about innovation. It doesn't always have to be this massive change or this great big thing. It can be a small change that really changes things for people.
Okay, thank you. I feel like a big overarching theme is just improving things for those around us, and maybe we have a personal connection to it. That's really awesome. Okay, we're going to jump into the second part. Innovation for products and branding both require feedback cycle. Can we talk a little bit about the feedback loop for your respective roles to ensure that the final deliverables have incorporated opinions from each? The first question will be for Dr. Cooper again. It's a two-part question. The first part, would you mind briefly discussing the importance of feedback loop during your course of any invention? And the second part is, what's a piece of critical feedback that you received that meaningfully changed the direction of any project?
Well, great. That's a nice question. Thank you, Brenda. So I look at this. We use this what we call a participatory action design and engineering process, and really this starts with collecting ideas from end users, right? The people that are affected by the problem. Let them define. I'm, being engineering focused. We look to invent and innovate to solve problems that people have identified. Through that means we have to get feedback continuously. That could be in surveys and in focus groups and interviews. Sometimes we use what's called journey mapping. Then we use storyboarding and models, and then prototyping, and then actually, sort of structured feedback where people might try a device in a controlled environment. We'll do benchtop testing to make sure that it meets performance standards. So having discussions with users about what are those performance standards, how do we define them based on a functional basis versus try to translate that into engineering and technical standards. And then we also ultimately might get to small scale and even eventually to large scale user trials. Even so, you can be surprised when things come to market, how people use them. For example, a few years ago, my wife and I were doing a study on an invention of ours called the On the Move pad, which we patented with the wonderful name of toilet seat wrap. I should have talked to McNeal and Sasha before filing the patent, but we'd got got wise with the naming when we got out of we got it actually to a product. But our idea was it would help reduce the risk of pressure ulcers when people are traveling by making any toilet seat basically a padded toilet seat. But once it got out, people use it to wrap their armrest on their wheelchairs. Therapists started to use it to wrap around bandages to protect, so you wouldn't, if you had a bandage or wound and you hit yourself, wouldn't get injured. People started to daisy chain them together, so link multiple together to use this. I think that's the other thing, is that you really never know what's going to happen when a product gets out in consumers' hands, right? So even with all the feedback you have, and it did a great job meeting what it was intended to do, but there were other users for it that we hadn't really designed or intended it to be used for, which I think is a good product. I guess another example is in the 1990s, we did a lot of work and eventually patented and marketed the ergonomic push rims to reduce upper extremity injuries, so wrist and shoulder injuries. And that resulted in 2 patents and 2 products sold as the Natural Fit and the Surge. But what's really, you've done something right when the patents expire, when other people first we got a code for it, a Medicare code, which is in itself pretty difficult to get a unique code. But the other thing is that once the patents expired, other people brought out other products that were similar, and it became a whole class of new products. So that's kind of cool too, right? When you know that you've identified a need, you've helped people reduce their pain or the risk of pain and injury, and at the same time, other people bring it to the globe. I could tell you a funny story. I was happy to be in Colombia, and and I was going out to dinner with a group of leaders from the country there and some academic leaders. And they said, Dr. Cooper, have any of your inventions ever had any impact on people outside the United States? We pulled into a wheelchair accessible parking space, and the guy next door was getting out in his wheelchair, and he had like at least three of our inventions on his wheelchair. And so I said, how about that guy right there? And so they was like, you must have set that up. I said, I don't think so. Random guy in a Colombian parking lot. So that's the other kind of cool fun about being an inventor, right?
So cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. It's cool to see the background a little bit of inventing a product that's so helpful for people. Okay, we're going to move on to McNeal. How does feedback loop affect your role as a brand strength coach? And can you share the difference between a brand strategist and a brand strength coach?
Oh, that's a great question. So I want to answer the first one first, feedback loop. So I think Dr. Cooper can attest to this. All of the different research and testing that he mentioned, right? Where you do focus groups, you do journey maps, and you're doing a lot of ethnographic research, right? Where you're watching people in situations, right? Putting them in situations or just being observant. That's feedback. And so the feedback loop, when you're actually talking to someone, showing them prototypes, getting them to play with it a little bit, it's actually helping you as the expert observer see where there are opportunities to improve or help, again, come to a solution that's actually going to be really beneficial for whoever you're working with. If it's a client, right? Obviously, Dr. Cooper's working on much more important stuff than brands. Most people don't think about brands the way they think about things that are, enabling devices that they depend on like every second of every day. But to answer your second question, a brand strategist obviously is someone who becomes that expert observer, right? They're the ones who can actually understand as a brand. There's so many things about branding and persuasion and marketing and how you actually use language and experiences in a way to evoke the kind of response that you want from someone, right? To create a mental association or a connection for them. Right, so that's where brand strategists live all the time. Sasha is always thinking about this stuff. I'm always thinking about this stuff. Myself as a brand strength coach, again, as an observer, is to take all that brand strategist knowledge and really understand an individual. Right now, what goals do you want to achieve? What is it special? What's unique or special about you that we can really build a story around and actually create a system or ways to always evoke those same emotions and associations and thought patterns when it comes to you as a person. So, or you as a company, or you as a product, right? Or your product. That's where I come in, right? So it's taking that brand strategist understanding, but really applying it to someone's unique strengths and capabilities, because everyone's different, right? I know, Dr. Cooper, in your field, there's this term of differently abled, right? And then some people, take exception to that term. I love it. It's actually one that I learned while I was at Carnegie Mellon, right? When we were doing assistive technologies. There's a project we worked on at the art museum or art institute that's right across the street from Pitt, where there were low vision visitors, right? And we wanted to create signage for artworks where they could easily, right, had to be really low tech, but easily magnify text on these small little placards next to art. And so what we came up with is something that was the size of the regular placard, but it was paper that was folded over, and there was a small handle where you could lift it, and we exponentially increased the size of the font so you could actually read it. So, if you had low vision, it was very easy. There was Braille on it as well. So if you were didn't have, your sight faculties like that, everyone basically, we made it much more accessible. Right, so creating those kinds of experiences becomes really important when you think about an individual's experience and how they're actually interacting with the world and what they want to say about themselves and their place in the world. And that's where, as a strength coach, I try to really hone in on taking all that knowledge, applying it to individuals and their situations and their strengths, and elevating those so that they actually can tell a bigger story about who they are and how they help.
Okay. Thank you. I have to admit, before working for Ashley, I didn't think that much about branding and personal branding. that was really informative, even just for me. So thank you for sharing that and explaining that really well.
Oh, you're welcome.
I feel like I need to talk to McNeal about my personal brand then.
After this, we'll have a conversation. I guarantee you.
There you go. Okay, Sasha, the next question's for you. You build brand strategy that doesn't have a temporary feel. How does feedback loop work during the course of your building a brand strategy?
Yeah. Well, first, I did not invent a cushy toilet seat or make art easier to see and understand. So whatever I'm going to say next just pales in comparison. But Brenna, to your question, I particularly care about building brands that endure. I'm publicly proud of the brands that I've built that have lasted 10 years or more through COVID, through social media, et cetera. And your question about feedback is so important that I'll say that the reason why I'm able to build brands that last 10 years is because while we're researching them and defining them, we're engaging the workforce, the constituents, the donors in the dialogue, specifically so that when we launch the brand, they're already ready to receive it. They're like, oh yeah, I remember when you asked me about that. And that perpetuates the longevity, that going back to the individuals you care most about while you're building the brand, so that when you launch it, they're ready to advocate. That's where I seek the feedback. Thanks.
Thank you.
See,
Thank you.
not a toilet seat or art.
Okay. So I like that you kind of brought up lasting brands and going through COVID and everything, because the next question is for both Sasha and McNeal. How do you balance brand consistency with evolving audience feedback, especially in a fast-changing digital space?
Ooh. Would you want to tee that one up, Sasha? Or
yeah, I mean, yeah. So brands have always wanted the feedback. Now, not necessarily in public, but gosh darn it, they needed the guidance, and they really used to spend incredible amounts of money producing focus groups, doing consumer intercept studies and stopping people on the street. In the 1900s, one of the companies I started in college, that's what we did. I had 80 employees, and I would deploy my staff to events, the X Games, concerts, et cetera, where they would intercept consumers and ask them questions. And Brenna, wow, that was hard work. We didn't have social media and digital tools to ask people questions now. So what I'll say is that brands are lucky to get the feedback they're getting, even if it's tough and public. They're using that feedback to navigate, to make decisions, to innovate, et cetera. So as hard as it is to receive the information and discuss it publicly, it's a gift. Thanks.
And to build on that, I would say, like, from a consistency standpoint for brands, right? It's a constant process. What the mistake that a lot of brands make, right, is not to go through that process that Dr. Cooper explained of build and test, right? Constant testing. You're coming up with something. If it's a campaign's no different than a prototype, right? You want to make sure that it's going to land with the audience that it's intended for. And from a digital standpoint, I think, if you're putting yourself in the end user or the consumer's shoes, they don't think about digital. It's just, I want this. I'm going to access it some way, right? If it's on my Apple iWatch, right? Like that, it's no different than if it was on their phone or on their laptop, right? They just don't think digital. They think, is it frictionless? Is it easy, right? That I think is much more important, because there'll always be, when it's holograms a few years from now or whatever, right? There'll always be a technological advancement. Really, it's about how do you make it frictionless for people to get the things that they need and empower themselves, right? And I think just one more point, a brand, the most important question any brand can ask itself is, who do I need to be now? Because again, the technology is going to change, the times are going to change, and brands, to maintain that consistency, they have to have that core idea, right? That universal kind of appeal or positioning, as we say, right? That thing that they're known for, that space that they own in people's minds. But communicating that and making sure that it's very clear in this day and age, or 20 years ago or 20 years from now, brands really have to keep abreast of that feedback to understand where do we fit in society, and what needs and capabilities do we actually empower or enable that we can speak to authentically, right? So the feedback becomes important, but also always asking that question: who do we need to be? How do we need to be? And making sure that you're doing the research to understand how to do that.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for bringing up the digital side of things. Because the next section that we're going to talk about is ethical duties and responsible AI, which I feel like is a kind of a newer topic in this sphere. Sasha, what role do you think brand leaders should play in shaping public expectations around the use of AI in everyday products?
Whew, that is the question of the time, isn't it, friends? Yeah. Well, I am one of those that believe that AI will be everywhere, touching everything, and we can be resistant to it, or we can think about what its impact will be. And you specifically asked about the ethical duties that we have as leaders. And because I'm such a proponent, now here's where I get hit. I'm such a proponent that I really believe that healthcare is going to be exponentially better because of AI. I think my role as a professor, my educating and enabling my students, I think is going to be 100 times better because of AI. And so my philosophy is that we as aware leaders need to be involved, participating, not outright rejecting. And that's our ethical duty, to participate. Because if our minds together are involved, we can embed ethics. We can embed kindness in AI if we want to, but we as leaders have to speak up and not resist. Thanks.
Thank you. I like that, not resisting. AI is here.
Yeah.
It's part of our life now, so I really like that. We're going to open up the same question to Dr. Cooper and McNeal, if you have anything to add to that.
Sure.
AI.
I mean, I think, to me, look, I'm an engineer. I've seen, AI to me is like Windows and Office and computer-aided design, computer manufacturing, mathematical modeling, all of those tools. It's another tool. I think it has I agree with Sasha. I think it's going to transform all of our lives in a good way if we use it responsibly, which is probably true of any new technology. And the good news is people having those discussions. But in my particular case, I really see AI as a tremendous benefit for improving scientific and engineering communication, right? Engineers are typically not known as great writers. And this way we can make ourselves better. And then also, I think I'm really interested in physical AI. So using AI to accelerate the speed of development of robotics technologies, or assistive devices, or assistive technologies, or for that matter, home automation and transportation, all of those sort of things, where we, could simulate thousands, if not millions, of scenarios and sort of come up with optimization that we can't currently do. So I think most people are thinking AI is a new thing. AI really started as a concept in the 40s, really made some significant advances in the 60s, especially with artificial neural networks. And then, even in my PhD, I was very interested in adaptive control and adaptive signal processing, which is a step along the way to our current AI environment. And so I just think it'll make all of us better and faster. I think in healthcare, it'll be able to do more personalized medicine as well as predictive medicine, and tell us to when you really need to change your behavior now, because in 10 years from now this is going can lead to likely lead to some bad things, right? So I think not only that, I've seen some really great research in using AI to, looking at how to look at different proteins and how proteins alignment can be done to create new vaccines and treatments, how you can use things like Nobel Prize winning click chemistry and AI to come up with things like new batteries or new drug treatments and new medications. So I think we're just sort of scratching the surface. I mean, I think what we did is we hit an inflection point. People have been working in AI for 70 years or more. But I think what finally happened is the ability to use large scale data sets and also the ability and even have access to such things as large scale data sets. And then the computing power has kind of got to the point. Now I think when we have sensors all over the world, right, that will give even more data, which will be personalized to us, our communities, our homes, environments, so things like that will only accelerate that advancement. So I do, there's just like any advancement, there's the risk for people to misuse it. But that's something we need to make sure that our laws and our ethical principles evolve as well, right? Or maybe accelerate that rate of change. But we don't want to stifle people's innovation, invention, and creativity, because I think it has a potential to unleash tremendous power. It's going to transform education already. I wouldn't even going to. I'd say it is currently transforming education at K through postdoc, essentially. Although I consider myself still a student, even though I graduated a long time ago, right? Because you want to be a lifelong and continuous learner, and we also just need to continue to work on making it better. Some of the initial large language models, which really only a subset of AI, and sort of trained on on data sets were available, and some of those were. The quality of the information probably is not what we'd like it to be, but you can see that now you could more AI that's sort of like enterprise AI or AI being trained on more reliable data sets or scientific literature are already making an impact. So it's actually a pretty exciting time for science, for engineering, for healthcare, for education, for arts and humanities. Sasha's in Southern California with the movie industry. I was at a meeting in July, and I was both shocked and impressed at the movies that people were able to create and using AI as a tool. So I think there's just it's if you think about that industry, CGI, right, just changed the field altogether. AI is going to be do the same thing, if not more.
And I'm so glad you brought that up, Dr. Cooper, because I think there's the AI component, but then there's also the other component that most people don't talk about, the ML component, machine learning, right? And when you're able to, now that people understand the capabilities of generative AI, we're just starting to see people adopting agentic AI, right? Where they're able to actually create their own data sets and use their data and use AI agents, right? As their own personal assistants and things like that. But the ethics around it are so crucial. I know there was actually a client that Sasha and I worked with not too long ago that was really wrestling with the questions of edge computing. And when you think about these devices, and especially robotics, they think of, they were in the automated driving space. They didn't think of a self-driving car as a self-driving car. It was a robotic mobility system, right? These things are robots, right? And they have to be able to think on their own in split-second timing. They can't wait for a decision to come back from some data center somewhere. When you're driving, it's a split-second decision that robot has to make on its own based on its training, right? So we're at this really, Dr. Cooper used the word or the term inflection point. I think we're at a really key inflection point for the ethics behind AI, how we train it, and of course, I'd be remiss on this podcast if I didn't talk about the data, right, and intellectual property, data itself, and these data sets and access to these data sets as intellectual property, right? AI is only as good as its training and the data that it's trained on. So the data becomes really valuable in this new AI-powered era.
Okay, thank you for that discussion on AI. I found that really interesting, actually. I feel like I thought I knew about AI, but maybe I don't. I didn't realize it was around for so long. That was awesome. Okay, we've got another question for Sasha and Dr. Cooper. What roles do leadership play in fostering innovation and branding, especially personal branding for founders?
Me? Who's first?
Go ahead, take it away.
What role do leaders play in personal branding, especially as founders?
Yes, in
And
innovation. In fostering innovation and branding. Yep.
Okay. Well, I have a very particular definition of leadership. In my narrow world, I believe leadership is being an example. I mean, maybe leaders have finance skills, maybe they've got career history, but in contemporary consumer psyche, it's witnessing that person as a leader do something and leading by example. So the way I try to enable my leader clients is by getting them to try new things and understand new things and be familiar with them enough that they can be an example. So that's my answer. Critical role for leaders in innovation is to participate and be an example so those that you're trying to move can believe in your guidance and see you as that forward thinker.
I like Sasha's definition. So I think leading by example is extremely important. I saw that early on when I was part of Scouting USA and seeing adults being scout leaders and how they would lead by example, and we would try to model their behavior. In the Army, that's a very common thing, right? Leading by example. Non-commissioned officers are supposed to be standards bearers, and that's how they basically train people as well. I'm a big fan of what I call not only leading by example, but rotational leadership, which what I mean by that is that even though I may be overall responsibility for our institute, right, the Human Research Laboratories, I'm not responsible for every aspect of every project. And as a matter of fact, somebody else, that leadership should rotate on a particular project based on whose expertise is needed to lead that portion of the project. And so I also think being a good leader means being a good follower. So knowing when to step aside and let somebody else take the lead, and let them use their talents and expertise to bring the idea forward. So that's another important thing. There's other things that can help as well. And I think leaders also need to set a positive climate and opportunities for people to advance. And that's another really sort of important factor. Now, if you want to talk about leading sort of industries or products, what you need there is things that actually meet people's real needs and sort of meet people where they are, and that understand that people change and cultures change and technologies change and distribution mechanisms and things like that change, and that you have to sort of stay with or stay ahead of that change and be willing to reinvent yourself. I know it's a common problem for inventors and for engineers in some ways as well to sort of get married to their ideas and are married to their solution. And the problem with that is even if it was a great solution at one time, it may not be a great solution for everybody, or it may not be a great solution, 2 days from now, or 2 months, 2 years, or 2 decades from now. So there is a constant need for sort of innovating in leadership as well.
Thank you for sharing. We're going to go ahead and start wrapping up a little bit. This part is a little bit of a surprise, but Ashley and I decided that we should ask each one of you for just a quick takeaway from this overall discussion. So, McNeal, if you want to go ahead, what should people take away from this?
Oh, wow. I think the fun fact that Dr. Cooper started with, that one day you might be in someone's romance novel, you never know. Act accordingly. Could be a takeaway. No, but in all seriousness, I think we're at an inflection point. It's a really interesting time where people have these amazing, powerful tools, but there are some things that are just timeless, right? These timeless stories that we tell each other, these universal truths about who we are and how we want to be, but also how to think scientifically about the way that you're actually going to create change, right? That there are processes that we can all use to be more effective and be better. And I think Sasha's point about participation, right? It really, get your hands dirty, right? Get your hands in there, get them dirty. If there's one takeaway, it's just try it, participate. You might create something amazing.
Okay, thank you. Sasha, in 1 minute or less, what should we take away from this?
Okay, well, I tell you, in a world full of trouble, I'm constantly looking to be inspired by people. And when Ashley introduced me to Dr. Cooper, I hadn't been familiar before, but of course I got to do my digging. And what an inspiration, what an incredible creator, inventor, enabler. And I wasn't familiar with Dr. Cooper before this journey. And so I'll just state for the record here that there are plenty of people to be inspired by, even when the world is tough. And that's my big takeaway from this experience.
Thank you. I love that. Dr. Cooper, finally with you, what should we take away?
Well, thank you, Sasha. I appreciate that. For the audience, if you are a writer, Sasha's open to be inspiration for a romance novel, for a character in a romance novel. But my takeaway is it's really there's a lot of good in the world, and so it can be extremely rewarding to dedicate your life to serving other people. And so I would hope your takeaway is, take your time and take your talents where you can, not only to help yourself but to help others. And so that would be my takeaway.
Thank you. I feel like that's a perfect note to end on. And before we wrap this up, there's a couple little raffles. So the first person to type out in the chat what HURL stands for will win a HURL t-shirt. And then the next question, we're going to do this a little quick so we can finish up. The next question is which NIHOF class did Dr. Cooper, was he an inductee of? So that person, whoever answers that question, will win a signed USPTO Dr. Cooper baseball card. So go ahead and answer in the chat.
For reference, that baseball card, that card that Dr. Cooper is on is worth money on eBay right now. For reference, everybody. So go get it.
Okay, so you want to answer. It's a good one.
Yeah.
There it is.
See, I have no toilet seat or baseball card to my name.
Another bit of trivia: the picture, the drawing is actually on the Roberto Clemente Bridge, which is Roberto Clemente,
nice,
famous baseball player from the Pittsburgh Pirates, as well as a Marine Corps veteran.
Okay, we are going to go ahead and wrap this up so we can get Dr. Cooper to where he needs to be. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and thank you to Ashley for trusting in me to do this. Hopefully it went well. I really enjoyed this. And our next IP Talk Brand Insights, Ashley will be back, but it's going to be with Mark Cheung. He's the managing counsel for Duolingo. It'll be December 11th, 2025. Join us to win a plushie of your favorite owl duo. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Duolingo's just down the street from me.
Cool.
Thank you, Sasha and McNeal. I hope we'll stay in touch. It's been
Please.
so wonderful to meet both of you.
It's been so fun.
Likewise. It's been great. And thank you, Brenna. This is a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Brenda. Yes.
Yeah.